It's Dina Dahl and Lisa Graves, and we are talking about the city of Los Angeles deciding to step up and fight back against ICE, especially after what happened in their city at MacArthur Park recently. Essentially, the city of Los Angeles, as well as some of the neighboring cities such as Pasadena, West Hollywood, Culver City, have decided to join an existing lawsuit that was filed last week by the ACLU, Public Counsel, the United Farm Workers, and others, declaring and asking a judge to declare essentially that the actions by ICE are unconstitutional, and they're requesting a preliminary injunction as well. This is the Legal AF channel. If you have not yet subscribed, be sure to free subscribe. So this is a meaty lawsuit. It goes to the heart of the matter of what ICE is doing to people here in the Los Angeles area. Specifically, it was filed in the federal Central District Court in the area. Lisa, can you just break down, because there's many things here that the pleading was listing out of essentially asking the court to declare these to be unconstitutional.
Yes, that's right, Dina. This is a situation where the ACLU filed this suit last week, as you mentioned, and now that suit, there's an effort to join that suit by these cities, big cities, important cities, to have that joint effort by the public interest groups, along with cities that represent the people living there. That is, I think, a substantial, I wouldn't say it's an escalation, but it's a substantial amount of weight behind these, behind this litigation. And so what's being alleged here, and I think it's true, but let me just say what is in the complaint is that the ICE procedures, as they are being imposed in Los Angeles County, in Southern California, violate the Fourth and Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution. The complaint alleges that ICE is engaged in racial profiling, basically seizing people based on their apparent ethnicity or race. That they may be doing so because of quotas or pressure, in essence, that we've seen reported in other places from Stephen Miller to just, seize people, maximize the seizing of people. People have been seized who have real ID, actual driver's license issued by the state of California, complying with federal law. They've been seized and they've been citizens. They've been seized. With green cards. People who've been aiding with gardening have been seized and their equipment's been left behind. People have been ripped out of their cars, out of their homes, out of their workplaces. Just today, outside of Los Angeles, there were reports of ICE chasing people down in fields as they were involved in harvesting our crops. And so you have this extraordinarily aggressive set of actions being taken by ICE. And on top of it, this complaint alleges that once people are seized, a substantial number of them are being held in places without showers, without beds, without access to medicine. They're being held in places that are actually not suitable. They're basically inhumane conditions where they can't readily access their lawyers, being held in overcrowded circumstances, and where they can't, have an opportunity to really make their case for why they should not be held, what their ties are to America, that they have not committed any crimes. And so this litigation is just another set of important litigation that's been filed to try to constrain and contain what I believe and many people believe to be, unlawful or reckless or inhumane actions by this administration that is not actually, following regular procedures in terms of seizing people. And also, quite frankly, I know you know this, Dina, but I think a lot of people don't realize, when they're just seizing people randomly in some ways. They're not actually going after a particular person, but sometimes when they do, they've got the wrong person. About a decade or so ago, I worked on a policy issue where the government was trying to change the rules for employment. And in those employment rules, it was the Republicans at the time called it 1-800-Big Brother. Like you have to call the federal government to get permission to hire someone. The statistics showed that for U.S. citizens, the government was wrong about who you were, like 3 to 5% of the time, which meant millions of people would not be able to get hired. But for immigrants, they were wrong half the time because of common surnames and common first names. And so it's really important when people's rights are at stake that we not have a government that's engaged in arbitrary and capricious action that has quotas and people with these masks going around and seizing people out of parks and the streets. And so this litigation is really important. Sorry, I went on a little bit, but maybe you could tell me a little bit more about what happened in MacArthur Park, because I read about it, but I bet a lot of people haven't heard what's been going on in Los Angeles.
Yeah, and I'm here in Los Angeles, and it's just the way that trying to militarize this, and like you said, just take people who are just trying to do their jobs. They're definitely creating fear in the community. People who are citizens are carrying around their passport cards because they feel like they need to show up because of the racial discrimination that this is the complaint is talking about, the profiling. And that MacArthur Park, it's just very close to downtown. It's often very crowded, and you could see the horses go through. I mean, this is definitely all about fear. And the thing is, too, is California is what the fourth largest economy in the world and a border state and the highest level of undocumented. Undocumenteds make us better, not worse. And DeSantis and Abbott were crying and about sending planes of people. I don't understand why Trump's not going to help them. We aren't asking for the help. I thought they had this crisis at the border. It's all a big show, but unfortunately, there's real people involved. And that's why we are grateful for groups like the ACLU and Public Counsel. And now the fact that City of LA is joining in. And also, just to note, the DOJ has already sued the city of Los Angeles. That happened, I think, a week and a half ago, because of the sanctuary policies of Los Angeles, right? So now this is a separate, the city of Los Angeles already has to defend that. Taxpayer money is already going to have to pay that. But now, because of this, what they're doing is acting as if they can do anything they want. They are above the law. The city of Los Angeles and others is having to really take them to task. And part of the complaint, speaking about the racial profiling, says, quote, "The raids in this district follow a common systematic pattern. Individuals with brown skin are approached or pulled aside by unidentified federal agents suddenly and with a show of force, and made to answer questions about who they are and where they are from." I can think of nothing more un-American than that. And it goes on to say, "If they hesitate, attempt to leave, or do not answer the questions to the satisfaction of the agents, they are detained, sometimes tackled, handcuffed, and or taken into custody." In these interactions, agents typically have no prior information about the individual and no warrant of any kind. And this is why we are focusing on this topic, on Legal AF so much, because we are a country of laws, even if Trump pretends that we're not. And we do have to do things like file these lawsuits to ensure that people follow the laws. But the fact is, it's also just bad policing on the part of the Trump administration. These quotas, by going and getting hardworking individuals, you're not actually getting the quote criminals, right? Which exist. When you're being lazy, right? There's reports after reports that show, finding that particular person that has slipped through the cracks, let's say, and actually should be rounded up and actually should be deported, takes time. But if you go to an immigration court, you go to a construction site, you go to places in Los Angeles that have undocumented communities as part of their members, you're going to find somebody. And here they don't even care if the person they're harassing and rounding up is a citizen or not. And that is racial profiling. That's unconstitutional. And this is why we have the ACLU and now the city of Los Angeles and other cities filing this lawsuit.
That's right. And it really is. I mean, it's absolutely chilling. The notion that the government can just seize people, demand answers from someone. People in the United States in general, for basically our entire existence have not been required to carry their papers. Right. We have not been a country, an authoritarian country where people have to show papers to random law enforcement officers. This is not someone, who's coming in the United States, knocking at the border to come in, coming in from an airport, do I have a visa
Right.
or do I have a, these are people who live in the United States. Many of them have extended family in the United States. They have longstanding connections to their community here in the United States. They're, as you say, they're seizing people who are workers, who are not facing criminal charges at all, who've committed no crimes. And again, I think that goes to the other dynamic here, which is just the amount of propaganda that the Trump administration with the right-wing ecosphere has just injected into the public dialogue. The notion that we've got millions of people who are violent criminals in the United States just roaming free, that is not actually true at all. And they know it. That's why they're targeting workplaces. That's why they're targeting people who are just, at the Home Depot waiting to help as day laborers. These individuals who they are targeting are almost by definition, because they're being randomly targeted based on this racial profiling, which is, I think, really apparent. I know it's alleged, but it certainly seems to be true.
Yeah.
They're targeting them because the premise is a lie. The idea that we have this massive crisis and, violent criminal aliens running around, that is not true. What we have is a country that has long depended on documented and undocumented workers, people with visas, as well as people who don't have visas, to provide a variety of services in our economy and in California in particular. And we know that the far right, the right wing, the Heritage Foundation, the Project 2025 writers wanted to target blue states. They wanted to target blue cities with sanctuary rules, and when you think about those sanctuary rules, some of what's happening is that this administration has changed the practices that allowed people to, go to the hospital and not have their papers demanded if they're dying or injured or having a heart attack, or if they're a survivor or victim of domestic abuse, that they could call the police and not have the police say, show me your papers, but instead the police do their job in protecting people, or ambulance, workers could get people to hospitals and take care of their health and not be demanding their papers. But what this administration has done is impose a series of cruel and inhumane policies to target hardworking immigrants who've committed no crimes. And in fact, people who have committed crimes, for the most part, those people are serving their sentences. And at the end of their sentences, if those are disqualifying offenses, they will be removed from the United States.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. That's the thing that I've always okay, if that is usually how it goes, you serve your sentence and then you're deported. Right. I mean, so that's how you find the criminals for the most part, because otherwise you're quote not a criminal, right? Unless you've committed a crime and had a trial and you're sentenced. And that happens all the time. Right. The states always cooperate with the federal government to deport somebody after they serve their time. So, so we've kind of ran out of probably our time, but we'll do another duet soon on another topic. This is Lisa Graves, Dina Dahl. You're on the Legal AF channel. If you haven't subscribed, be sure to subscribe. We're trying to cover all these still breaking topics as the summer moves along here.
Thanks, Dina. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.